The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. The sisters of Lazarus sent a message to Jesus. Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard this, he said, This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, Let us go to Judea again. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him. And Jesus said to her, Your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, the one coming into the world. And Jesus was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved, and he said, Where have you laid him? They said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, See how he loved him? Some of them said, Could not he open the eyes of the blind man, have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. And Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. And Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord. Thank you, guys. So if you go through the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Niagara Falls, they have on display there, as you enter in, these humorous gravestones. And one of them, I remember, has this engraved on it. Here lies an atheist, all dressed up and no place to go. Ripley's title, Believe It or Not, is similar to Christ's teaching. The Catholic Church proposes, it doesn't impose. You can either believe it or not. In our first reading from Ezekiel, God says, I'm going to open up your graves and I'm going to bring you up from your graves. Do you believe this? In our second reading, St. Paul says, If the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead dwells in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will give life to your mortal bodies also, through his Spirit that dwells in you. Do you believe this? In our gospel, Jesus said to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? That's not me asking that question. The gospel ends with that, or that conversation ends with that question to Martha. Jesus says, do you believe this? Jesus didn't ask, do you understand this? He said, do you believe this? Only twice does Jesus use the word understand when referring to his teachings or his parables, but the verb believe is used 98 times in the Gospel of John alone. Jesus says, whoever believes, not whoever understands me. At one point, the disciples asked Jesus, what must we do to perform the works of God? And he answered them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he has sent. It's not our works that God is after. He wants us to believe in him. Once we truly believe that we are personally loved by God and that nothing can separate us from this love, the good works will naturally follow. Understanding is good, and it will move you down the runway, but only faith will get you off the ground and up in the air. We always have to be choosing. Am I going to walk in faith or am I going to walk in fear? Am I going to let fear and my ever-changing feelings run my life? Or will I surrender my thinking and put on the mind of Christ? Remember, you can feel fear and yet not have to be afraid. You can believe in God and still not understand everything. I'll leave you with this one question. Are we going to make decisions based on our own understanding or how we feel? Or are we going to go beyond that and believe in God's promise? Whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?